I think what's really cool about the why behind doing something is that everyone has their own unique reasons. Someone could have the same goal to climb a mountain as their friend, but maybe the reason they're climbing is because they've always wanted to climb this mountain, and maybe the reason their friend is climbing it is because they've never climbed a mountain before and it's going to be a massive milestone for them. And so not getting too hung up on thinking you have to have this perfect reason planned out. If your heart is pulling you to do something and it's not going to harm anybody, like, go for it. You might even find the reason after you start doing the thing.
Welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. My name is Chris Kiefer, and today I am here with Sam Demma, who is a speaker, coach, and author of the book Empty Your Backpack. I am super pumped for today's conversation. I came across Sam through Instagram, actually, from Dan Martell, a guy that I follow. And I just saw it, like, immediately. I looked into this person's page and was like, oh my gosh, this guy's traveling the world. He's speaking. He just had a really good, like, vibe and presence and mission. And so I reached out to him and was like, hey, I'd love to chat with you. And so here we are, a couple weeks later. He's now back from his big trip. And I'm just really excited for the conversation today. So without further ado, thank you so much, Sam, for coming on today.
Chris, I am beyond honored to be here. Like you said, feeling unbelievable today to be alive and can't wait to have this conversation. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. And so we were chatting, and I was like, let's just dive in and talk about this. But Dan Martell was the kind of the connector, not through his own means other than his social. But he, first, I'd be curious for you to tell everyone, how did you come in contact with Dan, and what impacts has he had in your journey so far? And then I'll do the same on my end.
I'm a big believer in finding coaches for results and for improving life. And I had a long-term coaching relationship with a phenomenal gentleman who almost became like a second father to me, named Chris. And I felt as though after 3 years, I had learned many of the lessons that I was hoping to pick up from our relationship, and that it was time to look for another Yoda, another person who is steps ahead of me that could pull me closer to the visions and dreams that I was harboring in my head. And I came across Dan's book, Buy Back Your Time. And after reading it, I sent him a DM on Instagram. I also watched multiple YouTube interviews and podcasts of his. And he enrolled me into his world after asking me a ton of questions. But the real connection I made with Dan was actually a month or two into his program that I joined, his elite business coaching program, where his wife, Renee, saw some of my videos pop up on her Instagram page, which is crazy because that's how you and I connected. And Renee messaged the videos to Dan saying, hey, you have to help this kid. He's awesome. And Dan was like, he's in my program, Renee. So then Dan sent me a message and said, dude, why don't you come into Kelowna? And he goes on these founders hikes that he hosts in Kelowna every Tuesday up Knox Mountain. It was such a cool experience, and I'm giving away the story, but essentially I flew to Kelowna to go on a hike with Dan, and that's when I really met him, and I met Renee, and I met the team and toured the studio and built a really solid connection with him and a lot of the important humans in his life. And since being in his world, all he has done is put belief in my backpack, showed me that whatever I believe, I can bring to life and achieve. His systems around social media outreach and sales and marketing have played a tremendous role in my business success. But more than anything, just the way he shows up consistently in the world has inspired me to do the same. I have a hard time putting his impact into words, but that's how I met him. There's the story no one knows about meeting his wife as well. But I would be curious to hear how you met Dan too, Chris.
Yeah. So for me, I'm trying to think, like, the journey with the things that lead you to other things. But basically, I 2 or 3 years ago, I started investing in coaching. And you get into, once you experience good coaching or group coaching, whatever it is, in my experience, you immediately start looking for it in other places as well. So you're like, okay, this was great. Now maybe I could get a health coach, or maybe I could get a coach for finances, or there's just so many things that all coaching is just like providing you more rapid feedback and allowing you to grow and scale faster. So that's like when I started experiencing it 3 years ago. We then hired like a business coach, and then I was in this coaching group, and one of the people in the group started this other mastermind group, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting, and it was called Man on a Mission. And so Eric Rock is this guy who is friends, or was apparently Eric and Dan Martell got were in like the mastermind coaching group with like 6 people that Ed Milet coached. So Eric and Dan were friends and got to know each other really well. And so Eric invited Dan to come speak in Coeur d'Alene. And, I mean, at the time I was like, oh, okay, an author, interesting entrepreneur guy. And he comes in, and I met him and got his book. And as actually in advance of him coming, we heard he was coming, and they were like, he wrote a book. If you guys want to read it beforehand, So I read his book and was like, dude, this is freaking gold. Like I've told so many people, I even have it right here on my desk.
Let's go.
I've told so many people, like, you need to read this book, because for me, it was a step by step. Like, everyone knows that you need to delegate, but it's hard, and you get in your way of just like, oh, I'm overthinking stuff. And he's like, step 1, calendar and email, get it off.
Yeah.
And then not only that, but like, here's the templates that your VA should use to respond. And like all these things that were just like, oh, it's actually not that hard. And it was just like a big checklist of stuff to start working on. So anyways, that was my first experience. And then when he was in Coeur d'Alene, me and like 6 other people got to go to lunch with him. So chat a little bit more, and then have been following him. And at the lunch thing, I asked him about the SaaS Academy that he runs, and said that we have a software. And he was like, my SaaS Academy group is the best group for software, hands down. And then someone asked him, well, what do you guys do? And he's like, I don't know, because I delegate. You're going to have to talk to this person. And he was like, awesome. I just know it's the best. And I can't tell you anything about it. I just know it's amazing. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, and he was so genuine and kind of making a joke of it. But that's how he operates, is just like, I'm going to focus on me and my vision and my goals. And then I'm going to put people into places that are rock stars and let them have the freedom to expand. And so anyways, that's my journey to Dan.
That is such a unique story. I think we can both agree the thing that's inspiring the most about him is he lives his principles. And that just showed up in that conversation. He delegates almost everything to the point where he doesn't even operate in the business anymore. And I just think that's what really pulled me into his world too, is that he has values and principles, and he wears them on his sleeve.
Yeah, 100%. So let's get into Sam. So you are a speaker, an author. I've looked at so many of your stories. There's the Riz walk, which we could talk about for a little bit, but then also just this massive backpack. So if someone looks up Sam, they're going to see this huge red backpack. But I think I'll let you decide. It seems like the backpack's a good place to. That was something that you were pretty passionate about. I'm curious, where did that idea come from? Who inspired it? What inspired it? And then what is the book, and what's the whole movement that you go around speaking about?
Absolutely. The backpack, the book, Empty Your Backpack, the speaking tour was all inspired by a conversation I had with a student in grade 10 who on an Instagram live told me that his biggest goal in life was to have 50,000 followers on TikTok. It was during the pandemic. I didn't understand why this young man wanted social media followers. So I just asked him what in his life would change if he had followers. Like, why is that your goal? And he told me, if I had 50,000 followers, kids at school would stop bullying me. And immediately got super emotional, turned off the camera on his phone. It caught me off guard. Thankfully, there was another 30, 40 students watching this Instagram call live who started filling the chat box with the most positive comments. But it took us 5 minutes of encouraging him to finally turn his camera back on. There was tears running down his face. And we ended up connecting him with his guidance counselors. He's now in university and he's doing okay. But at the time, the call ended and I couldn't get the conversation out of my mind. And I'm getting goosebumps right now. And I was thinking to myself after it ended, I wonder how long this young man that has so much potential is is allowing the words of other people and their thoughts to affect the way that he sees himself, to affect the choices he makes and the way he shows up every single day. And as I thought more about young people and people in general struggling with negative thoughts and opinions, I thought that if you're carrying around other people's thoughts and opinions, you're probably carrying a lot. And at the time, I was writing a book. It was going to be called "Dear High School Me," and it was advice for young people, written by someone not far removed from school. And I was like thinking about the idea of carrying lots of things, and the analogy of a backpack came to mind because students carry them. I thought, well, if you're carrying lots of opinions, you probably have a really big backpack. And I got more passionate about this idea. So I went on Google, I searched giant backpack, and I saw this massive red bag, Chris, like 4 feet tall. You could fit a family in it. It's like, it's just a ridiculous sized bag. And I noticed it had Jansport written on it. So I called them and tried to get their support. It was hard to get in touch with them, didn't really go anywhere. And after 4-ish weeks, I ended up finding one of these giant bags on Facebook Marketplace, thanks to my mom's suggestion. And I ended up grabbing one. And at first, I was just going to write a poem, and it was going to be about letting go of negative thoughts. And I was going to use this giant backpack as a prop. But the more I sat with the idea and the analogy, I thought it was such a beautiful way to help people understand how important their beliefs and thoughts are. And it's such a visual and powerful representation of the mind that I wanted to do more with it. And after the bag sat beside my bed for a couple months, I thought, wouldn't it be crazy if I did a whole speaking tour about this, and we took this backpack across the country. And from that point forward, I changed the title of the book to Empty Your Backpack. We released the spoken word poem, and we ended up organizing a 3.5 month West tour in Canada from Toronto all the way to Vancouver Island and back. We did 87 events. And then we did the exact same thing in the fall, but trying to focus on the eastern provinces. And then I took it all across the United States and most recently Kenya. So that's really where the backpack idea originated from, what inspired the start, and where we've brought it so far. But it's
What
not
was
the end.
the so you said this Instagram live. What was the like what were you doing then? Like why were you on live? Like what was
Mm,
like the what did Sam look like back then?
yeah, great question. I started speaking when I was 18 years old and then formalized it at 19. And I was speaking in schools at that point, and then the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and I had 30 some engagements at schools completely canceled. And I wanted to create a space where students felt like they could express themselves and continue building those social muscles, because so many students stopped talking to people for a year or 2 years and were losing the ability to have a conversation. So I would just bring students up on Instagram live on stage and ask them questions and give them an opportunity to talk about their goals and dreams. And that was really the purpose that I was on Instagram live at that point in time.
Mm, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, do you so you wanting to I'm just like diving into like what you're doing is fantastic. And I want to know where does the what was the I don't know if you've heard the saying you can only go as high as you've once been low. But I'm like, so what happened? What happened in Sam's life that motivated you to want to give back and give back? So like there's lots of other jobs you could take that probably paid you more than this thing was, but you're like, no, I'm going to go speak. And so why? What happened to motivate that?
When I was a kid myself, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. And I pursued it with everything in my heart and my soul. I was fortunate to have a very supportive set of parents who drove me to the practice 7 days a week. I didn't realize at the time how big of a time commitment it was, but my dad would work a full day, and then we would drive an hour to practice that was 2 hours long and then an hour back home. And it was to get me the best opportunity to be a part of the best team. And by the time I was 13, I actually was moved to Italy for 6 months of my childhood to play with a professional club. Well, they asked my mom for permission to move me there for 6 months. And that was a transformative experience because I was being surrounded by a professional culture. I wasn't good enough at the time for them to keep me, but I came back home with this burning fire in my heart to bring this athletic dream to life. Sacrificed a lot of things throughout high school to bring myself closer. I firmly believe that we can't control whether we score in life, but the choices we make move us closer to the goal and give us a better opportunity at scoring a goal or getting the outcome. And I made all these sacrifices that I believe were just moving me closer and giving me a better probability. And by the time I was 17, I had a full ride Division I offer from Memphis University for soccer. And then the next 2.5 years of my life, I had 3 major knee injuries, 2 surgeries, tore the cartilage in my right hip. And it was like setback after setback. Memphis told me, we're going to delay this. We'll come watch you play again next year. 1 year turned into almost 3. And it was one of the toughest periods of time in my life. Um, I pursued soccer with everything that I had. And when I could no longer play the sport, I felt like I was worthless as a human being. And when your entire schedule is filled with the same thing every single day from the time you're 5 until you're a young adult, and then all of a sudden you're not playing anymore, it's really hard to find purpose. It's really hard to find meaning in those moments. I got really depressed. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Although I was very fortunate that my parents, they believed in me and kept supporting me. And I also had the support of somebody that I didn't expect, which was my grade 12 world issues teacher. He had an unreasonable amount of belief in my abilities as a person, and he would pull me to the side of his desk and he'd say all these things that I've carried with me to this day. He'd tell me that soccer is just this one game, but you can play another game in life and there's thousands of them, and the character you've built pursuing one thing is going to transfer to something else. And he just poured his belief in me, and he taught a lesson in class that I remember vividly, and he doesn't even remember teaching, which is hilarious. It goes to show that sometimes we don't even know how we're impacting other people. But the lesson was that if you take a small, consistent action, you can make a massive change. And that lesson in class led to a service project in the community to test my teacher's idea, where we would pick up garbage for 1 hour once a week. And I started doing it walking home from high school at first by myself. And then a friend saw me. We formalized it and started doing it on Saturday mornings. And that project gave me an opportunity to interact with young people and give back in the community. And I found so much fulfillment and purpose in helping. And we needed volunteers. So I started speaking in schools solely for the purpose of getting students to come pick up trash with us.
Just a pitch.
Yeah, it was 2 minutes. They would tack it on to the end of pre-existing assemblies. And all I remember is that I would get off stage and I felt like I was making such a contribution because I passionately told this story, and kids would come up to me afterwards and say, that was so inspiring. Like, I want to get involved. I want to help. I felt like I was contributing, and I also felt very fulfilled personally. But I never knew it was a thing that I could pursue with my time until after about 30 voluntary advertisements at schools. A principal came up to me and was like, dude, you need to do this. Like, you need to build a 30 or 60-minute performance presentation. We will pay you to come and deliver it at our school. And he actually gave me an honorarium for the time that I spent. And I was like, I love doing this. It's making a difference. I want to explore it. And so I went home. I searched speaker on Google. I called everybody I could find on the first 5 pages. I asked them all these questions, and it started this journey of exploring a new passion for me. And to answer your original question, why? Like, why am I doing this? When I was struggling, I didn't feel like I had the support from um, my friends as much as I did from my parents and my teachers, who were phenomenal, but I felt like I could have been supported in better ways from my peers that were a little more relatable for me. And I wanted to be that person for others. I also recognized that I was driven for the first couple of years by this desire to show the world that Sam could do it. And maybe this was a little bit of a Kobe bad fuel example, because soccer didn't work out. but I knew how much time and effort and energy I put into it. So there was a little chip on my shoulder that was like, I'm going to show the world that I can make a difference, that I could do something that I set my mind to. Um, so I think there was that fuel for a few years, and then it shifted to just pursuing my highest potential and sharing that version of myself with the world.
Mm. Man, so many. Thank you for sharing all that. There's so many analogies in my. I was basketball was my thing up through college. I only played 2 years in college, and then uh, whatever. It's just another story. But I at the time where I decided to stop playing was brutal. Yeah, it's like I didn't care. There was nothing in the world I cared about more than playing basketball. And then you don't have that anymore. It's like, But there's one thing that you said that I want to just highlight, and that is the character that is built in pursuit of something can be transferred to something else. And I think that's yeah, absolutely pivotal thing to. I mean, honestly, I would say when people ask what goal do you have or what's your goal, to especially to a young kid. But it's true. I feel like we're all just young kids. We just, can't
Yeah.
move as fast or whatever. Our knees start hurting. But we're still the same person. And it's like, when someone's like, well, why do you want to do that? It's like, who cares? Like, that's one thing for me that I recently, there's a book that I just read called Don't Believe Everything You Think.
Mm,
And Joseph Huynh, the author, says, your job is to figure out the what and figure out the what, and who cares about the why. You don't need to, like, the or even, sorry, it's not the why. Figure out the what and forget about how it's going to happen.
mm.
Like, your job as a human is not to figure out the path to get from here to this dream. It's just to define the dream and be super clear and specific about what it is you're trying to pursue. How you get there is that's not your responsibility, which is really weird to think about. But it's just like the people that are inspiring, and I would say you fall into this category, are just like, I'm just going to do this thing. And if someone was like, well, how are you going to do that? I don't know. Or even, why are you doing that? Like, I mean, you might have been able to answer it because I want to make a positive impact or something. But the bottom line is, like, at the end of the day, if you pick a what that is a mountain, you're going to have to become a mountaineer to tackle that. And then, whether or not you successfully tackle that, you are now a mountaineer. Like, you have made so much progress. It's like, what else do you want to do? So I love that reminder. And it's like such a simple principle. But one of the things that I'm doing, and the season starts in about 2 months, is I run a business. I'm 34 years old. I've got kids, like 4 kids under 7, but I've always wanted to coach. And I coached basketball in high school. Like, right after I graduated, I went back and coached a freshman team at my old school. But I'm taking on this head coaching job at a startup high school. So we're like the smallest division in Idaho here. But I'm like, people are like, why are you doing that? Or what's motivating you? And I feel like I just want, like, I feel I had good coaches, but I've also had a lot of bad coaches. And I also feel like the good coaches that I had, they weren't like great, unbelievable. They just, like, they were good. They showed up, they opened the gym and whatnot. And I love the idea of just being a really positive influence for 15 kids. I don't know what those kids are going to do, but I want to take all of the things, like, whatever your pursuit is, you're going to become somebody in that pursuit. And you can break that down to, like, we're going to pursue something this season, but I don't care about the result of the season. I care about who you become in the next 4 months and next 12 months or next however many years I have you in the program, because there's a lot of life after basketball or after high school or college or however long you play. And who you become in this, like, time matters.
I absolutely love that. I share a similar passion around being a positive role model. I think what's really cool about the why behind doing something is that everyone has their own unique reasons. Someone could have the same goal to climb a mountain as their friend, but maybe the reason they're climbing is because they've always wanted to climb this mountain, and maybe the reason their friend is climbing it is because they've never climbed a mountain before and it's going to be a massive milestone for them. And so not getting too hung up on thinking you have to have this perfect reason planned out. If your heart is pulling you to do something and it's not going to harm anybody, like go for it. You might even find the reason after you start doing the thing. So I just don't want people to get stuck on the why, you know?
Yeah. No, I love that. And then I also love the other part of your story of just, like this is actually another thing in this don't believe everything you think. He says, so personally, I'm Christian, so I would say there's more like divine, God inspired thoughts, but there's also the secular way of just saying the universe. But the point is that there's some like ultimate intelligence, right? That is influencing our thoughts, is what this guy would say. And so it applies, in my opinion, regardless of someone's background in religion or faith. But it's like, if you have, like, we have thoughts and then we think about them, right? So thoughts are just like, where are they coming from? I don't know. I don't know why I thought I should talk to that person at the lunch table who's by himself, or I don't know why I want to climb this mountain or start this company or say hi to this person or whatever. And what Joseph says is that basically, just the more that you can just be inspired by your thoughts and take action, and the less that you think or question, like, what's my motive here? Why am I doing this? What's that person going to think about me? If this doesn't work out, what's going to happen to me? It's like, just put all that, like, stop the thinking and just live in the present moment. And the all you know is that I have a thought that I should do this thing. So maybe take a step in that direction and see what happens, and then take another step and then take another step. And like, yeah. So I love that.
Right before our cross Canada journey, I called somebody else who had traveled across Canada. His name's Joe Roberts. He pushed a shopping cart across the country to raise money for homelessness. And I was asking him questions about his cross Canada trip so I could plan mine out a little better. It was something I'd never done before. And he said to me something I'll never forget that you just alluded to. He said, God or the universe would never put an idea in your head for you to do something that you are not capable of achieving or bringing to life. And it was this moment of peace that washed over me because I thought it was such a ginormous task that I didn't have the capabilities to bring to life. So I'll just share that as one last thought on this topic of thoughts and God and the universe.
That's awesome. I want to that Joe Roberts sound. Did you find this guy from like in your city or?
No, I posted online that I'm traveling across Canada and looking for people who have done something similar. And a friend of mine was like, I know this guy named Joe. And Joe's also a speaker and an author, and he's done lots of amazing work. I'd be happy to make a connection to him if you want to chat with him. He's a rock star.
Yeah, that's yeah. I love. I mean, that's the type of stuff that the yeah. I just am so grateful for the internet, man, and social media. Like, yes, there's a lot of bad stuff, but it's like when you just take a stab at, like, I'm just gonna keep chipping away and do this thing and do this thing and then see what happens. And it's reminding me of another. Have you heard of Joshua Medcalf?
No,
He's a sports, like a mental coach or like a
tell me more.
psychology coach. This is the other book. I'm currently reading this one. This is the fourth book
Oh,
from
cool.
him, Finish Empty. Um, he's going to be on the podcast. It's funny. I reached out to him and he was like, "Sure, I'll do your podcast after you read all four of
Hey,
my books." And I was like, "Sounds
that's
great."
awesome.
So, but he was like, "Not to be rude, I just want to have a more robust conversation about who I am and what I think and all that stuff." I was like, "That's awesome." And then the crazy thing is that every one of his books, I'm like, "Oh man, I needed this. This is great." But one of the things that he says is, the story of David and Goliath, and that I heard Malcolm Gladwell has a really interesting take on David and Goliath, where David actually wasn't an
Mm.
underdog like we
Ah,
all want to think he was, because a slinger, or whatever you call that, a rock and a sling, they were so accurate, and they could fire these rocks, these little pebbles, so fast that they were basically like prehistoric handguns. So David, who is this sheep person, actually was so accurate with this little sling that it wasn't like today we think, Like, I'm just going to take a rock and like try and kill this person, which is kind of crazy. But he like knew, like, pick me, I can do this. Like, I can take this guy down. And it's like, imagine going to a fight with this guy in a ton of armor and you bring a handgun and just shoot him in the head and you win. Like, and that's kind of what he was doing. So that was Malcolm Gladwell. But what Joshua Medcalf highlighted that I just is so much more applicable and makes that still like there is an underdog story there. And I would say what Medcalf says is we have all of these, we all will have Goliath moments in our life where like the time's here and you got to step up to the plate, Sam, and deliver, you know? And you can't, like, if you don't spend the hours and years in the sheep field and herding sheep and doing the mundane, boring, just day in and day out grind of whatever that task is. And for David, it was, I'm just going to keep these sheep alive and I'm going to kill this wolf and go find the one that got lost and stay in shape and stay fit and just put in the work every day. Like, if he hadn't done that, the Goliath moment comes and he can't step up to the plate to make that happen. And I just love it's back to like you're building character that you can apply to something else. And I think that's just such a good reminder and also motivating to reframe the boring, mundane, like stuff that, or the stuff that you're going to do 1,000 times, 10,000 times. And it's like, oh, why am I doing this over and over and over again? And it's because it's preparing you for something. And you don't know when that event's going to come or even how the skills are going to translate to the event. But I feel like I see a lot of just what you've described in your journey. There's like so many of these things that on one hand, you could be like, what was the value of this thing or this one conversation that I had here or this picking up this piece of trash, like, did I need to pick up that one? I know I picked up the other one, but was that the one that made the difference? It's like all of it made the difference. Everything. It all was another rep, and that got you to the next moment. And then there'll be another one. So anyways, I love that. I read it recently. And that's what I'm sharing is like, it's all just like this whirlwind of thoughts that are getting me excited.
And now a quick word from our sponsor, which is Boolean Review. Boolean is a review software that my wife and I own, and we sell this software to home service businesses. So I know there are many different people that listen to this podcast, but if you know someone, an electrician, an HVAC business, a painting company, maybe a coffee stand, someone that is providing service to customers and get found online by customers, we would love to talk to them. This is a review software that is the highest converting review software in the home service space in particular. And if you're wondering what that means, if you have 100 clients in your business, the typical business gets between 1% to 2% of those customers. So for every 100, they would get one person or two people to leave them a review on Google. Other review softwares get between 3 and 5%, and the Boolean review software gets 20% of your customers to leave you Google reviews. And these are fantastic Google reviews with lots of words, keywords that are going to help with SEO, pictures, stories, the names of your employees. So if you want to learn more, check out booleanreview.com. And now back to the episode.
I feel the excitement coming through the screen, so I appreciate you sharing it, and I share the excitement even for the mundane tasks. I think about when I first started speaking, I had a coach who told me every day you're going to you're going to do 20 email outreaches to schools to share how you can help them and their students this year. And it was so mundane. It was like every day, non-negotiable, reach out to 20 people. And then I took it to the next level, which was filming outreach videos, 20 a day. And I would sit in my local library with hair that was way too long. I was a little kid at the time. And I would just send these 20 videos to principals and schools every day. And I still have all of the videos in my video outreach software called Vidyard. And every once in a while, I go back and watch them and I smile because it was that attempt, that effort, that enthusiasm for the work I was doing that helped me get to where I am now. And without those outreaches and thousands of rejections, I definitely wouldn't be doing the things I am today. So I cannot relate to that enough. I invested in a speaking course early in my journey called Youth Speaker University. It was a guy I found online. It was instrumental in helping me get started. The thing that put fire in my backpack and took it all to the next level was also an individual named Chris, who ended up being a business coach. And we would talk for 2 hours every Tuesday. But the idea of a daily discipline is something that every coach I've ever had has has told me. I mean, Dan has daily non-negotiables. Chris gave me daily non-negotiables. This guy Josh gave me daily non-negotiables. So I think it's fair to say we have to show up consistently in our lives if we expect to see outcomes. It's not about doing the right thing one day a month. You and I both know as athletes, if we said, I want to be the best athlete ever, is training in the gym the right decision? Absolutely. If you only train in the gym once a week, are you ever going to make improvements? Absolutely not. And so it's like doing the right thing is not even enough unless it's done over an extended period of time with consistency day in and day out. And I think that idea is what I've taken from all the different coaches I've trained with.
Love that. Yeah, I will say that I'm curious, what other goals do you have in the future that are like adding to the motivation or the necessity for the daily work?
I just got back from a 6 week experience in Kenya with a friend of mine and a local there. We ended up volunteering in 20 schools. Every year, I like to do a give back project. And the year previous, we made a donation to a mental health charity that I'm very passionate about. But I wanted to do something that involved my time and energy this year. So we organized a speaking tour in Kenya, and it was life changing. And the thing that surprised me the most about the trip was students walking up to me and telling me their struggles with mental health and their struggles with school. And I was able to see so many connections between students here in Canada and North America and students in Kenya and Tanzania and Africa. And I was like, I thought they maybe would have had different challenges and issues based on the way they've grown up and the things they've been exposed to. And it made me realize that the idea of challenge is universal, and this message could be something that's needed everywhere. And so before I left Kenya, I opened my journal and I wrote down empty your backpack world tour, and I wrote down 10 countries, 20 events per country. I don't know how, I don't know when, but it's going to happen. And I drew a poster of the world with a giant backpack on it. And I think that's one goal I have, is to bring these messages and this performance to 10 countries in the next 2 or 3 years. With who, I don't know. How, I don't know, but it's going to come to life soon. So I would say that's one of the big ones that's pulling me forward. Um, I also have a goal to publish my first children's book. I've been working on it with a team, and I think it'll come out sometime next spring. So that project is also pulling me forward. And I've also reached a point in my career where a lot of my earlier goals I've brought to life, and I've been able to build an impact in a business that I love. And I've recognized that there's a lot of other people in this space speaking in the educational industry for staff and teachers and students who want to expand and do more. And I feel like I've walked that path. And so I've recently turned around and started helping others. And watching someone else book an event for the first time and get paid to do something they love has been a big inspiration for me. So the idea of coaching other speakers is also a goal that's pulling me forward.
Mm. What's been well, actually, quick question. This children's book, what's your target age of child that you're writing this for?
It's 500-word picture book with a simple story about kindness. Most likely it's going to be for kids age 3 to 5. I, without the permission of my other co-authors, read it for the first time at a school to get an idea of their reaction. And I told them afterwards so they know. And we got little guys running up to us saying, when is the children's book coming out? My birthday's in May. Do you think it'll be ready by then? And I was like, I don't think so, but when it comes out, we'll ship some to the school. But yeah, we're aiming for young kids like ages 3 to 5, 3 to 7, around there.
My daughter's 7 and she reads like crazy.
Oh, cool.
And anyways, I would put me on the list to be notified when you release it.
Will do.
And what was the other thing you said that Oh yeah, I mean, traveling to 10 countries in the next 3 to 5 years, I think that's awesome. Do you have like a wish list or potential list of countries?
It's such a new dream that I've dreamed up that I haven't fully formalized what it's going to look like. I do know a couple of things. One, to a degree, the countries need to be English speaking, or else I'm going to have a really hard time performing. Uh,
Yes.
but people would probably assume Kenya. How would it work there? There was a lot of English speaking schools that we visited, so that will be one criteria that I'll consider. Um, Another one is if they have the capacity to do these sorts of things. There may be some countries you go to that don't have this sort of an experience that they like to provide to their schools. So I guess interest on behalf of the schools in the countries we visit. And then the last criteria is people in those places who are equally as passionate about the work so we can partner together. um, I realized that me just saying, let me go and do this in Australia and trying to make all these connections in Australia myself is very difficult. But if I find someone in Australia who also works in schools and I'm like, hey, let's partner on this, do this together, it'll make that seemingly enormous goal into simple steps. So those are the three criteria that I've been thinking about so far. But I don't really want to limit myself too much because God, the universe may have different ideas, and I don't want to just say this is what it has to be, you know?
Yeah, love that. Um, awesome, man. Well, yeah, the last question I have, and then we'll move to our wrap ups here. Are for speaking. That's something that I'm I'm very passionate. Like when I was in high school, I was a student body president, and then in college, I was involved in student government as well. And I love even today, like I love the opportunity to get in front of a crowd. And I'm big like on. I just want to. I always find a way to bring a joke into it. I heard a long time ago Chris Farley, who's one of my favorite, like, classic SNL guys. Apparently, he had such terrible nerves and just like anxiety when he would, every time, like, even as a professional, he would get so anxious that his method, because he was always doing this live in front of audiences, so he would always do something that was like self deprecating or like trip on a table or fall down or whatever immediately to get everybody laughing, and then once the crowd was laughing, then he could like flow into it. So in a weird way, I wouldn't like trip or be silly, but I would always think like, okay, in my head as I'm getting ready to go on stage, like what is the thing I'm going to comment on that just happened or whatever to try and get a laugh, to like gain some momentum in like comfort, if that makes sense. Is that relatable to you at all, or how do you use humor, if at all? And what's your like pre speaking approach, and or the like how do you open up to like captivate the audience and take ownership of the room?
I absolutely love comedy. I actually hired a comedian named Adam Bloom who has a phenomenal book called Finding Your Comedic Genius. He's done the Just for Laughs tours. He's done TV. He's done stand up his whole life. He's from Edinburgh. He's from Edinburgh, I believe. And I had him go over my keynote and help me find funny. Like, hey, man, I want to make this more humorous for the audience because I've always used humor as a tool. I don't look at my work like being a comedian. I look at it in a way that I want to spread information that moves people and helps people. But humor is such a phenomenal tool because if the whole room laughs at something, there's a unified moment between every audience member where they recognize the joke at the same time and have a shared experience. I believe it opens their minds. And then you have the permission to insert the ideas you want them to walk away with. So, humor for me, massive. In terms of the preparation for opening up a speech, I tend to practice and rehearse all of my opens and closes weeks before the actual event. But then when I'm at the event, I do my best to arrive a day early. If it's a 3 day conference and I'm the closer the last day, I'll try and go for the whole conference so I can hear the thoughts of all the other presenters. I can sit in some of the workshop rooms. I can have dinner with the team that brought me in and ask them some questions about things that people love in Boise, Idaho. And, I find out certain things by having those conversations and asking those questions. Like here, we don't have something we called fry sauce. And so when I did my speech for 1,500 students in Boise, I walked on stage and I said, y'all, I just tried something for the first time, fry sauce. And the whole room was like, ah, they just lost it. And so when you can prepare an open, but then add to the open a lot of relatable things to the folks that are sitting in the audience, it just instantly shows them that you care, that you've done your research, and you're a true professional on the platform.
I love that. That's awesome. Any other things that are top of mind that you like to share or you came to today that's like that's on your heart?
I came with an empty mind and an open heart, and I enjoyed the conversation. I don't have anything top of mind that I'd like to say other than whatever your heart is telling you or pulling you to do, give yourself permission to give it a go. You might surprise yourself and do something extraordinary or find something new that you love doing. So just give yourself permission to put the negative thoughts and limiting beliefs aside and try out those things.
Okay, I thought of one more. Rizwalk. Why? What is it? Where did it come from? And yeah, the maybe I'll have our editor go like dig up a clip of you doing this so we can show everybody what it is. But yeah, give me the backstory on that.
For all my Gen Z listeners, they're laughing when you said that word. For all of our millennials and adults, they're like, what is Riz?" Uh, Riz is a slang term for charisma, so it's really the charisma walk. And I have a story in my performance where I talk about learning how to Latin dance and embarrassing myself, but ultimately I find this new passion that I've carried with me to this day. And it's a beautiful and funny story. And there's a moment in it where I walk up to someone to invite them to dance, and when the word Riz came about, I made up a funny version of my walk over to this person to invite them to dance. And then I started calling it the Riz Walk. And on a random Tuesday, I posted a clip online of this walk, and it got like 4 million views. And people were just going nuts in the comments, laughing. And some people were saying some crazy stuff, but that's social media. And it just became this sticky thing that now I go to events for students and conferences, and they're like, do the Riz walk, do the Riz walk. It's pretty funny.
That's awesome. Because I was going to say like I would say I love dancing. But in high school or middle school, I was terrified and more just embarrassed by it. Like I was afraid what people were going to think. And then in high school, I was in this leadership camp that we go to. And basically because my sister like gave me a pep talk leading up to this camp, she was like, Chris, when you go there, there's a dance on Tuesday and Thursday night. And you just got to walk in, and like the moment you walk in there, you just start dancing and just don't stop dancing, and you'll just blend in and have a great time. And so I did that, and that was like it was my freshman year. I basically remember going in and like having to give myself a pep talk, like you're going to start dancing right away. But then I had a ton of fun doing that, and then throughout college and everything, I'm not a like technical dancer. I just am all about the silly, ridiculous, just like move, do whatever you want. But I tell like our kids because we all have dance parties in the house, and I when they're old enough to explain, I go through how critical your face is when you're dancing. So when I was in high school and college, I would always like there would be people that are like, oh, I don't like dancing. I mean, no, you just need to figure out your face, because if you dial your face in, then you'll be fine. And they're like, what? And I'm like, so when you dance, if you're like on the dance floor and you're just kind of like, doing whatever you're doing and you're just like straight face boring, like that is not like, that's not going to work. People are going to be like, what is wrong with that guy? But if you get in and you're doing like the fizz face and you're just like getting weird, then it looks like, well, that guy knows what he's doing. Like I have no idea what that move is, but he sure is having a great time. So I'm just going to let that happen. So anyways, I'm a big fan of silly dance moves, and the Riz walk was one that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to show this to my kids, because this fits right into Chris Kiefer's wheelhouse, which is like not technical but hilarious.
I gotta share one thing real quick about dancing. When we were in Tanzania, we took a quick trip to Zanzibar, which is a little island there. This is after we did our work in Kenya, because my friend comes from Tanzania. We went to visit his parents. and we were in Zanzibar, and there was this live music playing on a beach, and no one was dancing. Everyone was sitting in these white chairs, just bobbing their heads front row awkwardly. And I could tell just from the energy that people were loving the music, but no one was willing to go in this little spotlight and dance. And we were walking back from dinner, and I looked to the left and I saw this happening. I looked at my friend and I was like, bro, I'm going to go start a dance party. And the moment I vocalized it, I got a little bit nervous because it's still uncomfortable for me to go and be the first person to get on the dance floor. But I went back to the room, we changed our clothes, we walked back over to the beach. And at first I stood behind everybody, and my friend was like, dude, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm giving myself that pep talk. And a few minutes later, I walked into the spotlight in front of this band playing on the beach. And I just started doing a little simple 2-step dance, smile on my face. And before I knew it, there was like 30 people dancing. And what I told my friend when we got back to the hotel room was, bro, that went amazing, but it could have went sideways. Like I could have been the only person there, and there could have been nobody dancing, but I would have been so happy when I got back to the hotel room and put my head on the pillow, because I told myself that I was gonna dance, and I did it. And regardless of if other people joined, what's more important is that I followed through on something I committed myself to do, and as a result, I feel good going to sleep tonight. And I think we all have those conversations in life, not only in regards to dance, but in so many other things. And when we can follow through, it changes the way we see ourselves.
Mm, yeah. And it's like it's not your job to figure out how you're going to get everyone else dancing.
Yeah,
Just figure out what you want to do,
yeah.
go do it, and then let everything else unfold. Awesome. So 3 book recommendations.
First and foremost, Buy Back Your Time. I know you mentioned it earlier, but that book has been a big cornerstone in my life for the past couple of months. It also helped me grow and expand my business, so I wanted to mention that one. Second book, Empty Your Backpack by this guy named Sam Demma. I highly think you should check it out. I'm going to keep that one off the list, but if someone gives it a listen, please reach out to me. I would love to hear your thoughts. Second book recommendation I'll give is The Way of the Superior Man. I found that book super helpful in managing relationships at different times in my life. And the third book that I'll recommend is an all-time favorite of mine. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's been a cornerstone in my self-development journey. I've returned to it multiple times. So those are the 3 books that I'll give. But I would say my book recommendations change based on where I am in my life and what I'm looking for or seeking in terms of new learning. So I hope it doesn't stay like that forever.
That's awesome. Yeah, start with the end in mind. Number one, the 7 habits. Um, awesome. And movie suggestion.
So again, this is something that changes for me. I know some people have an all-time favorite, but I get really inspired every time I watch a new movie or a new film. Um, so I'll say, while flying home from Kenya, I put on Simone Biles documentary on the TV, and it was incredibly inspiring. So I would
Is it the
recommend people to
Simone
check it out.
Biles Rising?
It is the 2-part series on Netflix.
You said it's awesome.
It was phenomenal. She talks about her journey in managing her challenges and struggles and taking a break from the sport. And as an athlete who stopped playing for my own reasons, it was it really hit home with me. And she talks about her journey doing therapy, which has inspired me to start therapy as well. And yeah, I can't really put it into words. It was just a really, really good film.
Awesome. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's your preferred method of contact?
I mean, look out the window and really hard to miss me with the big backpack. You could just shout down the street. Um, Honestly, best way, Instagram. It's just my name, Sam_DEMMA. I would love to connect. If people are looking for a speaker, they can go on my website, which is just samdemma.com. Those are probably the 2 best ways.
Awesome. Well, Sam, it was a pleasure. So great getting to chat with you and know you a little better. And yeah, we'll hopefully see each other around it. You're in Canada, right? Which part of Canada?
Yeah, man. Home for me is just outside the city of Toronto. I plan to come back to Idaho, though. I didn't know you were there. So when I do come,
We're
we're
in
definitely
North
going to meet up.
Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, which is way more beautiful than Southern Idaho, just so you know. The desert's down south. We have the lakes and the mountains and more like Canada, more what you're used to probably.
Do you know if that's near Jim Rohn? Are you a Jim Rohn fan? He's
I know
from
who he is,
Idaho.
but I don't know. I'm actually curious, where is he live here now, you're saying?
He's passed on. He was the mentor of Tony Robbins, and he one of the one of my favorite speakers and authors. I still listen to all of his YouTube lectures. I'll send you a few links, but I know he's from Idaho.
Oh, his parents worked in Caldwell, Idaho. Caldwell is close-ish. I'd say it's probably like less than an hour away from Boise.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah. Um, anyways, yeah, that's that. I have a buddy that's in Canada. He lives in Barrie, I think.
Nice.
He was the best man in my wedding. But
No way.
anyways, it's great chatting with you, and thank you so much for being generous with your time. And good luck on the speaking tour and traveling the world and all that stuff. And keep on sharing the good stories that you come across.
Thanks, my friend. Keep it up.
Thank you so much for listening. My name is Chris Kiefer, and my mission is to champion the relentless pursuit of purpose. And what that means to me is to be an example, a champion, someone that is in the trenches, working and showing and winning and trying and failing in how to pursue a deeper and more meaningful life with the people that I love, with my kids, with my friends, with our family, and also just be a champion and example of entrepreneurship and following my passion and doing what I believe I'm called to on this earth. And so if that inspires you in some way, please share this episode. If you want, like, subscribe, share, whatever, do all the stuff. It means the world to me to get this message and get these guests that I have out there. And if you're interested in any of the book recommendations or looking up other episodes of the movie list, you can visit my website, chriskiefer.com, for all the details on the show. And also check out the Boolean review software, as well as the Boolean automation consulting company that I own for home service businesses. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.